Hey there, welcome to That Photo Thing. My name's Tommy, and today we're talking about light as a subject. Oh, jeez. Maybe not that much light. Maybe not that much. Wow, that hurt. So you're a photographer, and as such, you know that means your camera requires light to hit the sensor in order to capture a photograph. This is obviously a basic concept, but over time you start to appreciate the quality of the light that's wrapping around your subject in order for your camera to capture it. So for example, golden hour light hitting your subject and wrapping it in a nice warm yellows and oranges, or a diffused light that has the shadow detail get removed because of the nice even spread across your whole subject. These are obviously concepts that you use to enhance your subject or get the quality of your subject to be more prominent in the photo. But have you ever thought of just photographing the light itself as a subject? So here at That Photo Thing, we're going to do another basic exercise installment, which means that this video, like the other two, are a little more self-explanatory, and I'll show as many examples as possible just to try to drive the point home. And over time, when we get more advanced in these lessons, I'm only going to be working on the specific photo that we're going through in the video. So for this one, we're going to be talking about essentially light appreciation. And what that is we're going to be photographing light as the subject of our image. So we're talking like the way the light comes through a window and it hits the carpet, and it puts like those little squares down on the carpet. Those squares of light are now what you can use as the subject to photograph, or a beam of light coming through something, to where essentially the user, the play of light is what catches the user's eye for this particular style of image. So instead of looking for a specific object as your subject, we're going to be using light as that subject, where your viewer's eye is immediately going to go to that part of your image, and then it's going to look at the rest of the photo. This is a pretty easy exercise to do, as most people, when they look at a photograph, they're first attracted to the brightest and darkest parts of the image. And if we're photographing light, we're obviously photographing the brightest part of the image as our main subject. So you're going to be drawn to that subject, and then you're going to be able to see the photograph. So the viewer of your photograph's immediately going to look at that light as your subject, and then see the rest of the photo afterwards, always being drawn back to the brightest spot in the image. So I'm going to provide a few examples now, since this is a pretty self-explanatory kind of lesson, and yeah, this will help hopefully wrap your mind around this concept. So the first photo is this crystal ball here. It's a black and white image that I just basically put a disco ball on the ground with the sunlight hitting it, and then I put one of those clear spheres that are like just made of glass. Some people call it a lens ball, some people call it a contact juggling ball, but I basically just put that next to the disco ball so that you get two different kinds of light. One of them is going through the crystal ball in a single point onto the image, and the disco ball, of course, is reflecting the light down into all these cool little squares that are going down. This is considered light as a subject because the first thing that you want to look at is the scatter of the way the lights are, and then you're going to start looking at the darker parts of the image, such as the sphere and just the overall 3D texture of it, and therefore gets that nice little effect to it. Next up, I have a friend that collects crystals as a little side hobby, and he has these things called a star garnet. And what a star garnet is when you shoot a light at it, it'll, I don't know if I want to say refract, it spreads the light as soon as it hits the object, spreads it into either an X pattern or a 5-pointed star pattern. And what I did is I lined 3 of them up, and I put a flashlight up against my macro lens and got real close to the 3 stones in this particular image, and they put out beautiful little X's made of light. So the first thing that you see in the photo is the X's and how prominent they are, and then you start paying attention to the stones around it and the rest of the surrounding of the image. Of course, I want to include this Devil's Den Prehistoric Spring one since, as you saw from the last video, I just visited there for the first time. And this one was kind of fun. I had my tripod and my camera kind of sloshing around in the water up to my neck at certain times so that I could just capture this photo without having any other distraction. And I exposed it so that the light is the main part of the subject. Just a big beam of light coming through the ceiling of this photo causes you to instantly look at no other part of the photo. There's like people swimming around in the photo, there's other parts of the water in the cave system, and even the vines. But the first thing you're going to look at is how bright that column of light is coming through, and then you start inspecting things like the vines hanging off the photo. This is a nice little subtle version of light just coming through, beaming down, and that makes light the subject in this photo. There's also like an obvious one. You can do a sunrise like this one here. What was neat about this sunrise is originally I was trying to go for just like a lens flare trick, which depending on how you're doing the lens flare, you can make that's essentially light as a subject in that way. But in this case, I got really lucky. This thunderstorm was passing on by and it kind of tried to swallow up the sunrise that morning, and it created this big column of light coming out through the photo. So obviously you will look at this giant orange beam of light just coming through that opening in the storm. So that's the subject here. So, all right, so now it's time where we go out and we do that photo thing. And what that photo thing is I challenge you, the viewer, to go out and do that photo thing that we just talked about. So in this case, it's light as a subject, and where you're just kind of looking for the light playing onto any surface or going through any object and making any kind of cool design that you can then photograph, so that when somebody looks at your photograph, the first thing that they're going to look at is that light in this photograph. So, like I said, a window has a light coming through it onto the carpet and makes all those cool little squares. As long as you're photographing with the idea of those squares as the subject of your image and your composition reflects that, then that's a good light as a subject photo. Any kind of reflection like I showed in the disco ball image, that's a lot of times that reflection, if you're focused on photographing the reflection and not the thing causing the reflection, then you get a really cool design from light bouncing off of that object. So there's a lot of little things that you can play with. So if you are happy with what you've created, please feel free to share it with us on the Instagram community just by posting it on your own Instagram and then using the hashtag #ThatPhotoThingChallenge. And also, if you like to see anything that I've done, including examples of this exercise, just follow my Instagram at DangerInFocus, and that's 2 underscores in the name. And I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you learned something today. If you are familiar with this exercise, or you're pretty experienced as a photographer already, feel free to try this exercise again or as many times as you'd like. It just kind of helps develop, in my opinion, it helped me develop a really strong eye for just appreciating any kind of light that's coming through a tree or any kind of light that's in a room, and just makes you feel inspired to go out and shoot again. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's go out and do that photo thing.